So just a recap of how we're going to run today. Following this introduction, we're really thrilled that we've got Professor Lucy Chappell here, Chief Executive of NIHR and Chief Scientific Advisor at the Department of Health and Social Care. And she'll be talking about why we've introduced impact prizes. And then myself and my colleague Edwin Tucker will take you through the eligibility and judging criteria and information on how to submit your applications. And then, as I said, we've left a good chunk of time to allow you to ask us questions at the end, and then I'll bring us to a close just before 3. So with that, I'm really thrilled to hand off to Professor Lucy Chappell, who will be telling us why we've introduced impact prizes. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Lovely to be here. I think it's a very exciting day to be launching our NIHR's very first impact prizes. I count myself really lucky that in my role I am out and about, and through all sorts of different media I hear about NIHR research that really makes a difference in so many different ways. It saves lives and can get headlines for that, but actually it does far more than that. It can improve quality of life, it can reduce costs, it can we think about how it enhances resilience, how it drives productivity, so many different areas. I often talk about impact as being plural because as well as those impacts, I think it's also about our workforce and how we make a real impact in growing our capability and our capacity to do high quality research. So these prizes are really giving us an opportunity to celebrate, to showcase the people that do that research and to think about all the different meanings of impact and to share those stories. I think it is uplifting to hear about them, but also to hear about them in lots of different flavours. The NIHR, and you'll have heard myself and Gail Marzetti, our director, really talk about maximising impact. Part of that was when I came into government, I realised that certainly for our public users and our ministers, it's something that they can really, that feels much more tangible to them to really see that. I think it also recognises that the storyline, the red thread that runs through research. I remember the many days when I thought that my job was done when a paper was published and I thought that was the end of it. It's just the beginning of it. It's about how that research is really adopted into policy or practice or guidelines that actually goes the last mile to make the difference for people. And so the prizes are part of our sort of commitment to really showcase that impact. And we also want to call out the different ways in which that impact is actually achieved, which will hopefully be a virtuous circle. Some of you will know that I don't talk about positive findings or negative findings. I talk about findings because we should remember that research that shows that something that isn't beneficial is just as important. So this is not just about glitzy headlines. This is about the whole spectrum of what impact looks like. So the prizes are really for those where research changes people's lives in a whole variety of ways, or where it promotes economic growth, which therefore drives health outcomes. I would like to get across that I think impact can come across in many different ways. We are including economic impact via health outcomes or in parallel with health outcomes, because we see the very tight fiscal context we're in. And at this point in time, we're making a clear argument that investing in research and development really brings high returns to society. And at the moment, we're in the middle of spending review and in the government, where we are clear that we need to make that case to Treasury. So for every £1 invested in NIHR research, society receives over £13 of benefits. £9 of those are direct health benefits, plus wider spillover benefits to UK firms and the wider economy. So we've deliberately chosen not to specify particular prizes for particular areas of activity. And the prizes are open on purpose to research across all of the areas that NIHR funds, including health, but public health, social care, global health, primary care, it's really important to us that we showcase the breadth and the best of that breadth in these prizes. So it might be an intervention in a social care setting, or a public health measure, or research that's taken place in primary care, or a new surgical technique that has been implemented, or perhaps even stopped as a result of the research. And it will celebrate the researchers, but the teams. And you know that we've talked about team science recently. You need to have received direct NIHR funding, and that includes academy funding and global health research, or you've received support from NIHR infrastructure and be able to point at what funding has led to the research. So we're going to be awarding up to 6 prizes, depending a bit on what response. From the numbers on the participants today, I'm delighted to see such a healthy turnout. We've explicitly said that 3 of our 6 prizes will go to early career researchers. I really want to call out our talent pipeline every time I do events or visits. So I am so heartened by our talent pipeline. And so that's where we are going to put our prizes where we in that direction. The prizes are not actually going to carry financial value. And we've thought long and hard about this, because, how do you do that adequately? But we really want to give the public recognition to the researchers that receive them with these prizes. So I'll be handing over in a minute to the team to tell you a bit more about the application and the judging process. It is our first year, so we might get some things right and we might want to improve the process. So bear with us while we do this. I am strongly in favour of a sort of a learning environment. So, but we've got to start somewhere, and I'm keen that we give it a go this year. But I really want to come back to this. Should give recognition to our research and the research that we fund. I see as a researcher myself what a difference it makes. And when I've seen things through the pipeline all the way to impact, it brings a joy of what we can actually achieve. So I really want this to be about how we maximize the impact of your research and think about how it unlocks the benefits that research brings, and make that case on a daily basis to so many people in the public domain, around government, in R&D circles. You will be part of helping that story. I suspect that we're going to be inundated with amazing stories, and I will work with the team to look at how we showcase as many of those as possible. So back to the team to hear more about the processes, and I really look forward to what will be coming our way. Thank you.
Lucy, thank you so much. That was a really helpful introduction. So I'm going to be taking you through the eligibility and judging criteria for the prizes. And I know from the questions that many of you sent in advance of the webinar that this is an area that you've got quite a few questions about. So hopefully I'll be answering some of those in the slides, but as I said earlier, we'll give you a chance at the end of the webinar to ask any more you feel that we haven't covered off. So next slide, please. So who can apply? And it's broad. So it is basically anyone either currently or previously who's held an NIHR award, or an individual or team whose research has benefited from either funding and or support from NIHR programs, our research infrastructure funding. So that would include the ARCs, the HPRUs, BRCs, and it includes the research delivery network. And it also includes people who've benefited from academy funding. And to note that for people applying who've had global health research funding, if they're based abroad, they're also eligible. But a very important thing to note is that it's only one application per project stroke team. A number of people have asked if there could be multiple applications, and the answer is no. Next slide, please. But crucially, what you need to do is to draw that golden thread between the funding and or support that you've received from NIHR to the research that you did, and then the impact that you then delivered. That is the critical thing, being able to draw that line between the 3 elements. Next slide, please. as Lucy said, there will be three prizes, up to 3 prizes for early career researchers. And early career researchers can apply on behalf of the team, or the team can highlight the contribution of an early career researcher. But as I said before, only 1 application per team. And we're defining early career researcher as a researcher who meets either or both of the following criteria. So they haven't held a grant as a chief investigator. That excludes fellowships exceeding 100,000, and they've completed a PhD within the last 5 years. And this applies to the time period when the research was done. So it may well be that you're applying and now are not meeting the criteria, but at the point the research was done, you did, and then that's still okay to signal that engagement as an early career researcher. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by impact? At a high level, it is research findings that have demonstrably transformed people's lives and or promoted economic benefit, as Lucy was saying. But also, as she was signaling, what we're talking about is an incredible breadth of areas in which impact might have been delivered. Everyone will be thinking about new treatments, but it could also be interventions that have really addressed public health issues. We're certainly open to examples within social care as well as in health, reducing health and care inequalities, supporting innovation, encouraging investment, so that economic benefit may be something that actually really facilitated new jobs and investment. I'd encourage you to go to the NIHR website, where this link will take you to stories of impact, and they will give you good examples of the types of things that we might be looking for. Next slide, please. What it isn't, we've had a number of questions about, well, can we put in an application if we see that it's got huge potential as impact? I'm afraid no. This has to have been demonstrated. We've also had questions about whether, if you've done a really fabulous approach in the way research has been undertaken, for example, through great PPI, and no, that isn't impact either. And it also isn't an impact factor for a journal. So it isn't being able to say, my research was published in the Lancet. What we want is that demonstrable change and impact and benefit to society, either in terms of health and well-being or economic impact. Again, we've had a lot of questions about the time period. As this is the first time that we're doing these prizes, we've got no time limit on when the research has been undertaken, but the impact must have been realized in the last 5 years. So that's the time period that you need to think about. Can I demonstrate that this impact happened in the last 5 years? But we're very open to research over a longer time period, because as everyone on this call knows, impact can take a long time to achieve. Next slide, please. So in terms of providing evidence of that impact, you might want to provide links to policy documents or strategies, national and professional guidance, relevant statistics and data. You absolutely can cite the publications which describe how the evidence that sort of underpins the impact, links to intellectual property or spin-outs or professional publications and news stories. Again, very broad church in terms of what you might use by way of evidence. Next slide, please. We're also incredibly interested in how impact was achieved, as well as the prizes offering us an opportunity to really celebrate the impact that NIHR research has delivered. It's also an important opportunity to understand how the research that did deliver impact, how that was achieved. So we're really keen for you to describe that, either the way in which you engage stakeholders, the particular creative or strategic dissemination techniques you used, or the involvement you had in wider implementation activities. Next slide, please. So I hope that's been useful. I'll now pass on to my colleague, Edwin Tucker, who's a Senior Programme Manager in I4I, and he'll take you through the submission process. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Candice and Lucy. So welcome everyone to the Impact Prizes. For this next part of the webinar, I'll be explaining to you the submission process, the timelines, the questions that we're asking, and also the video format. And at the end, we'll have an opportunity to have a Q&A, so do please continue to use the Q&A function in Zoom, and we will discuss those at the end. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, stay on this slide. So let me just outline the submission process briefly. Of course, today is the launch of the Impact Prizes, so our submission form is live for you to start completing, and you can locate this on our website on the NIHR Impact Prizes page. We'll be asking you to make your submission, which will be a short form application using Google Forms, and also a 2-minute video submission. The deadline for this will be on the 13th of November at 1 p.m. Then once the deadline has been met, we will check and validate your submissions. So checking the formats and completion of the form and video, and also review the eligibility of the submission, which Candice just covered moments ago. The submissions will then be reviewed by the NIHR Review Committee, chaired by Dr. Gail Marzetti, the Director of Science, Research and Evidence at the Department of Health and Social Care, and also Deputy CEO of the NIHR. We're a decision to award up to 6 impact prizes and up to 6 research teams or individuals, and also 3 specifically for early career researchers. Next slide, please. Regarding timelines, of course, we are now open and live for you to complete your submission. The deadline for us to receive your submission is on the 13th of November at 1 p.m. and you will likely hear of an outcome in February next year. Of course, we will hold an in-person ceremony in March of next year, likely to be in Birmingham, but the venue and date are still to be confirmed. And attendees at the ceremony will be senior Department of Health officials, leaders in health and care organizations and industry, public contributors, and also NIHR program, scientific and infrastructure directors. Just referring to the columns here, and in particular, I just wanted to draw your attention to the resources available to you before, as you complete your submission. We have on our website the applicant guidance documentation, and this details the expectations on how to complete the form and what we are looking for, much of which mirrors what I'm speaking about now and what Candice spoke about earlier. We also have the course specification detailing the scope of the impact prizes to help you plan your submission. I should emphasize again that we do have an email inbox for you to send your inquiries to, and this is impact-prizes@nihr.ac.uk, and someone from the team will be happy to follow up. Okay, next slide, please. Again, just to re-emphasize the submission deadline again. Next slide, please. Okay, so let me now speak about the submission form. You'll be asked to complete a short Google form online, prepare and submit a 2-minute video to support your submission, and also include a list of references as part of your submission. Next slide, please, Sarah. Now, specifically on the form, there will be 4 sections for you to complete, covering the NIHR funding details for the Impact Prizes submission. So this is where we ask for your various NIHR project references and details from you and your team so we can validate against our records of the funding and support received. Section 2 will be a summary of the research, where we ask for a plain English summary of the rationale of the research and its key findings. And section 3 will be the impact. So here we ask a subset of questions specific to your impact, including a summary of the difference your research has made beyond academia and evidence of the benefit made. We also ask a description of how the impact of the research was achieved, a description of how the impact was directly linked to the NIHR's funding or support, and also a text box for you to include references to support the earlier questions. There is also a section on instructions on the video format and how to upload your video and file format to a Dropbox. And I will go through this now. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's just go through each section in a little bit more detail. This is the first section, section 1. Here we ask for the Impact Prize application title. So I think it's important to note here that this does not need to be the same title as the award or project title relevant to the research. This should really just be a single title covering your Impact Prize submission. The Impact Prize lead applicant details. So this is your name, contact details, and the role in the original research for the Impact Prize applicant. So depending on the nature of the research, this may be the principal investigator of the research or another representative of the research team. And it is this person with whom the NIHR will communicate in relation to these submissions. So emails and sort of notifications and outcomes. As Candace mentioned, only one application should be submitted per team or program of research. And we do ask you just to confirm that you're the only applicant applying for the Impact Prize from that team or program of research. We'll then have a field asking for your organization details that were awarded NIHR funding if funded directly. This may be the host or lead organization that was originally contracted with the Department of Health. This also applies to consortia as well. So for organizations that were not directly funded by the NIHR, but they may have received support from NIHR through infrastructure or research delivery networks, please also list these organizations that benefited from the support. So in essence, do include key collaborators, organizations or co-applicants who are involved in the research. Finally, the acknowledgement of the early career researchers. So research teams may want to highlight the efforts and contributions of an early career researcher that has contributed to the knowledge mobilization and impact of the research. So do name and provide, do name these individuals and provide an ORCID ID for this individual and complete this section if you intend to highlight their role in the research impact. So selecting this will ensure that the application is reviewed for the Early Career Researcher Prize. Candace has already provided a definition of early career researcher. Next slide, please. So now on to section 2. This is the summary of the research. So what we ask here is for, in plain English, describe in no more than 300 words the rationale for the research and its key findings. You may include here evidence to validate the findings where possible by providing numbered references with a corresponding reference list, which you can upload in a later section. Just for everyone's benefit, we do also have some guidance on writing plain English summaries, so you may find that useful. Next slide, please. And now on to section 3, your impact. So here we would ask you to provide a summary of the difference your research has made beyond academia as outlined in our judging criteria, which you can see in the core specification online. So here you will need to provide evidence of the benefit and difference your research has made, not just the potential benefit of the research to make a difference. So do quantify the impact here where possible. So number of people receiving new treatments, number of lives saved, and reduction in disease prevalence as examples. Just to emphasize again, the NIHR does have an impact case studies microsite where we do showcase some examples of relevant impact. Second question, here we ask, please describe how the impact of the research was achieved. So for example, how knowledge users were engaged in the research, including the patients and public, and how the research was disseminated and taken up to change and improve health or care proactively. Third question, we ask you to just clearly describe how the impact is directly linked to NIHR's funding and or support, and also the added value of NIHR's support. And finally, question 4, this is where we ask you to provide a list of corresponding numbered references cited in the earlier sections as part of your answers. So the references should be cited as in-text number citations throughout your responses to section 2 and 3. And these in-text numbered references should correspond to the references list provided here. So examples, you may wish to include key academic publications, policy and guidelines, publications, news articles, or media coverage that have highlighted your impact. And you will be allowed to use URLs where possible. And just to remind you that the references you provide will be used to validate the information provided in the submission. Regarding the period in which just to repeat earlier, regarding the period in which the impact should have occurred, to be eligible, the impact reported through the application should have been realized within the last 5 years, although, as we said, this may change in the future. Next slide, please. Finally, regarding video submissions. So we do not expect professionally produced videos. However, please ensure that the visual and audio are of good quality and its message can be clearly understood by the review committee. We do have some supporting guidance on filming tips and editing videos. You must please ensure that your video is no longer than 2 minutes, as only the first 2 minutes will be considered by the review committee. And in the guidance, we do have some format requirements, please, and instructions on how to upload the video to Dropbox, and the file format being your organization name _ applicant surname. Do please be aware that the Dropbox will stop accepting applications at the same time as the submission, so on the 13th of November at 1 p.m. when the call closes. Next slide, please. Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's all from me.